Social Transformation Project. We got a lot of excitement about this workshop, so I'm expecting maybe a couple more people are going to be joining as Eugene is talking. But just so you know, the best way to do this, I don't know what view you're in right now, but if you're in gallery view, you might be seeing like lots of faces, which kind of works right now with the limited amount of people on the call, but once a lot of people join, it would be good if you can go to the top right corner of your screen and kind of hover your mouse and you should see the view and change it to speaker view. If you have questions about that, let us know. But yeah, so you can just change it to speaker view so you can see me mostly, or when Eugene is speaking, you'll be able to see him. Welcome to everyone else who's joining. We're just going over some of the logistics of the workshop. So again, yeah, if you can change it to speaker view, you'll be able to see Eugene or myself speaking. And just so you know, everyone is muted when they join. So if you drop off and you call in, you should actually be muted. You can unmute yourself at any point if you're like dying to say something. But generally, because we're going to have a lot of people on this call, we ask that you not really unmute yourself unless you really have a burning thing you have to say. If you're calling in, you should be able to click or press *6, and that's how you can unmute or mute yourself. So if you suddenly become unmuted, you can mute yourself with *6, I believe. And another way that we really want this to be engaging is you can use the chat box. So I know a lot of people have used Zoom, but if you haven't used Zoom, you can move your mouse to the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you'll see it should pop up and say chat. So you might just want to keep that open also. If you click chat, it'll show on the right side, and people can just start messaging. I'll send a little message right now. So just feel free to like send out like shout outs and any kind of comments there. If you have questions or like technical difficulties, you can chat it there. If you get disconnected somehow and you like can't get back in, you can email me. I sent an email out just before. So just let me know if you need help and we'll try to get you back in. We are recording this so that we can share it with a lot of people wanted to be here and they couldn't, and some people I think afterwards are going to want to reference this. So we're going to be recording it. I don't believe it's going to record when you're working in your small groups, but the main instructions are going to be recorded. And so like Eugene said in his email, I think yesterday, this is a really interactive workshop. So it's not really like a typical webinar, but it's going to be, we're going to be doing lots of different things here. And it's actually one of the first times we've done this. So we're really excited to learn this new format and to collaborate. And we just really appreciate your patience. And if there's any difficulties or any difficulties you have with the technology, just let us know using the chat box or by emailing me. Yeah, I think that should be it. Eugene?
Thank you, Julia. Actually, I think Jody was going to say a few words and welcome you all.
Well, first I'll start out by thanking Julia because she's what got you all on here and really did some heavy lifting to get this organized. So thank you. And it's my pleasure to welcome you. I hope that you are all feeling at least a smidgen of radical hope from these last 2 days and some of the shifts that's happened in our country. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you just to take a second right now and let some of that in. There's a fabulous group of folks on this call, and I'm glad you're going to get to know at least a few of them. And just to let you all know, I'm the executive director of the Social Transformation Project, and we partner with leaders from progressive organizations, intermediaries, and funders to create radical breakthroughs in our collective power and effectiveness. So our shared goal is to affect long-term structural change for a more just and sustainable world. And together, all of us, we strategize, experiment, learn, and implement practices that shift the culture and increase the power of the progressive movement. So thank you all for being here today. And you come from different parts of our world. So some of you have been trained and gone through leadership training with our sister organization, the Rockwood Leadership Institute, and have worked with us over time on cross-movement organizing. Some of you have been through our consultant training, where we work with consultants who work with progressive leaders on creating more powerful and effective organizations. And others are colleagues of those people who have passed on this, this invitation. So welcome, you are all meant to be here. And it's really my pleasure to introduce you to Eugene Kim. 3 years ago at STP, we were really looking at how do we increase the power of the networks that we serve, not just to get the low-hanging fruit that comes from relationship building across movements and putting great people in the same room, but how do we really grapple with the complexity so that our efforts are getting at root causes, they're building our collective power, and that our efforts are adding up to more than the sum of their parts. And we started working with Eugene as well at Faster Than 20 and Allison Kim, who's now at MEG. And one of the tools that Eugene brought to that work is the tool you're going to see today, the Success Spectrum, which really helps groups to get specific and align. And one of the things you'll come to know about Eugene is that he makes you work. What we're trying to do here is not just do what we're already doing better, but actually learn some new things and do things we couldn't previously do. And that takes practice. So a lot of what Eugene will bring you is not just a tool, but also get you practicing with each other to build the kinds of muscles and mindsets we need to build our power and get this collaborative work done. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Eugene and to turn it over to him now.
Thank you so much, Jody, and welcome everybody. It's so wonderful to be able to see all of these different faces, some of whom I'm recognizing, some of whom I'm looking forward to meeting in this call and maybe a little bit beyond. Thanks for joining, thanks for participating. I'm going to walk you through what we're going to be talking about today very quickly and what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Give me a nod. I think everyone's still muted. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to walk you through this tool. And more specifically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just frame it up for you. I'm going to describe why this tool exists, basically why it matters so much to be thinking about aligning around success when we're talking about high performance. We're going to actually all use the tool together. So as we said in our introductory email, there are Google Docs created for all of you. So you'll have a chance to basically walk through the tool. And then you're going to be able to have a chance to compare the work that you do with someone else on the call. So you're going to have a chance to get some peer feedback, get some practice that way, as Jody mentioned. We're going to see if we can fit in 2 rounds. We'll see how the timing of this goes. But there'll be at least 1 round to connect with each other and get some feedback. And then we'll do a collective debrief. So we'll talk about our experiences with the tool, we'll answer any questions, and we'll just go from there. As Julia said, if you have any questions throughout the conversation, please mention it in the chat. If it's something that's urgent or important, like you're having technical difficulties or something like that, then we can be sure and troubleshoot that immediately. If it's something that we might want to discuss during our debrief, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be collecting the questions and we'll be clustering them so we can talk about those in designated times. With that, I guess I will open it up, see if anyone has any questions. Again, you can unmute yourself if you want, or you can just mention it in the chat session. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to start off just by introducing this tool to you, the goals and success spectrum, and again, framing up, more importantly, why we care about this. So I'm in the business of supporting groups in getting better at collaboration. And the 5 principles that have kind of emerged from the work as being some of the most important things to achieving high performance are these: everybody is people, be intentional and hold it lightly, alignment, not control, make the implicit explicit and specific, and celebrate and keep improving. I'm not going to say too much about these right now. I'm sure a lot of them are self-explanatory. Some of them you might have questions about. But the main thing I want to point out here is this one right here: be intentional and hold it lightly. As it turns out, one of the things that have struck me in the past 15 years of working with groups and seeing groups that are both high performance and groups that are struggling is that the number one thing that groups seem to struggle with is not being aligned around goals and success. And it's a really interesting phenomenon when you think about it, because I know everybody on this call has set a goal before. And I know everybody on this call has gone through the process of setting goals and priorities with your teams. And yet at the same time, what happens is people forget, or people are not actually aligned. You come up with a list of goals, but people actually don't agree on them. And what happens is the groups struggle as a result of that. Oftentimes you look at the different dynamics of the groups, you look at the different problems, and you're trying to basically understand, diagnose those, and intervene. And really what it boils down to is getting clear about goals and success. And again, this is kind of like obvious to most people, it's common sense, and yet it has struck me over and over and over again how often this is a problem. And this is where I think the other principles start coming in. It's not that people don't understand the importance of goals and success necessarily, but it's the other principles around alignment, making sure that everyone is aligned around the goals, which is really hard. It is the discipline about being specific about success. What does success really look like to you? And then there's the discipline around celebrating what you achieve and constantly refining, constantly improving, finding ways to keep going about doing it. It's not just some ceremonial process of writing something down and then you check it off, right? But it's actually living into your goals. And so as Jody mentioned before, I think what's really critical here and what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to create a practice around, as a group, aligning around goals and success. And so this is a tool that's basically designed to support you in doing that. It's meant to be very simple. It's something that I use with every project, with every group that I work with. It's something that I've found tremendously valuable. And a lot of the groups that I've worked with have found it useful as well. Again, if you don't want to use this tool for whatever reason, or if it's not right for you, I think that's okay. What's really important is the discipline of taking time at the beginning of your project to actually sit down with your team and come up with goals and success together. And then the discipline of sitting down with your team at the end of the project and actually doing the assessment. So at the end of the day, that's really the point that I'm hoping you all walk away with today. If the tool is valuable, if it's something that you start using, then fantastic. But the real underlying goal is to support all of you in going through this process on a regular basis with your teams. So with that said, and without any other delay, I want to just start diving into the tool. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to jump into Google Drive. Can you all just kind of raise your hand if you're in the Google Drive right now? Okay, so a couple of people are waiting to get into the Google Drive. I know there's a few, at least one person who's on the phone right now. I believe I know who that is, and I know she's going to be joining us later. So you'll be able to join the Google Drive later. If you're in the Google Drive, you'll see there are a bunch of folders with different letters in it. These success spectrums are organized by first name. So if you go into the folder with the letter of your first initial, you should find a document with your success spectrum in it. So go ahead and find that document and open it up. Fantastic. So what I want you all to do is just take a minute. Some of you may have already done this already, but if you haven't, this is your chance. Take a couple of deep breaths. I want you to think of a project that you want to basically practice this on right now. It doesn't have to be a work project. It can be a work project if you want to do it. It could be a personal project. It could be I'm remodeling my garage, right? It could be I'm planning my vacation. It could be whatever you want. The main thing in this case is you're going to be sharing what you come up with some other person on this call. So it just has to be something that you're going to be comfortable sharing. So take a minute to think of a project. And then also think about the time span that you want to think about within this particular project. So if you're thinking about your organization and you want to do goals and success, like pick a time span, 1 month, 3 years, whatever you want to choose. When you have a project in a time span, you'll see there are fields in your document to capture that. Go ahead and just capture it in your Google Doc. All right, I want to take 3 minutes and I want you to just visualize what success would look like by the end of this time span for your project. I want you to think as specific as possible. And this is all about quantity, not quality. So I don't actually want you to be censoring yourself or worrying about what's good or what's not. This is just a brainstorm for yourself. So you're going to take the next 3 minutes. You're going to write down as many things as possible about what success would look like for your project. You're going to do it in the target column of your table. Okay, are the instructions clear to everybody? Okay, you've got 3 minutes. Go ahead and go. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to move things around into different columns. So let me explain what the different columns are. You're going to notice there's a failure column. We're not going to worry about failure right now. We're just talking about success. There's a minimum, there's a target, and there's an epic. So the easiest way to explain these is you can think about these as essentially a spectrum of goals. That's why we call it the success spectrum. And the minimum success column should indicate everything that needs to happen in order to declare this project a success. So it is the lowest bar things that you would consider to be success. If those things don't happen, if any of those things don't happen, then the project is a failure. So that's what minimum success is. Target success is what you're aiming for. It's what you're designing for. And target success should be attainable, but challenging. It should be a stretch. And so the way I like to think about target success is you should, at the end of the project, if you're successful, you should hit about 40 to 60% of the items in target success. If you hit more than that, you probably haven't challenged yourself enough. If you hit less than that, then it's probably too challenging. You need to tone down your goals a little bit. So that's what target success is, 40 to 60%. Epic success is if your project is successful beyond your wildest imagination, what would it look like? So this is your chance to be visionary. This is your chance to really kind of think as wildly as possible. You want it to be within the realm of possibilities, so it could happen, but you're actually not aiming for it. So if none of the things happen in epic success, that's really okay. It's there to sort of be your vision column. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions about the columns? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to take the next, we'll give you another 3 minutes to just take the items in your target success column and start moving them around in minimum, target, and epic. Again, don't stress too much about it. Put it where you think it makes the most sense, and then we'll move on. There's a question from Ginger about what percentage is minimum success. You want to hit 100% of the items in minimum success. Okay, that's your lowest bar.
Tuet and Denise were part of a success spectrum that we created for a convening, and we had Beyonce showing up for our convening as part of Epic Success. You know, it could happen. It could happen.
She did not show up. Not a failure. So I'm going to ask you to pause for a second. Don't worry, you're going to get to continue to do this. But what I want you to do is just take a deep breath, take a look at your spectrum, and just see what patterns you notice. See what's coming up for you. When I've done this with groups in the past, some people you'll notice that everything that they put down tends to go into minimum, or you'll notice that they tend to be super tactical. You'll notice different patterns. Some people are super high level. All their goals are in the epic column. This is an opportunity to make adjustments. Ideally, you want something in all three columns. They don't have to be balanced, but it's good to think about that. If you're noticing any patterns about the types of things that are in your success spectrum and the things that might be missing, here's an opportunity to fill in those gaps. So take another 3 minutes and just make whatever adjustments you want to make. Okay, wrap up what you're working on. Take a look at what you've written up and just really celebrate completing this first round. All right, this is great to have gone through the exercise. Again, this is celebrate and keep improving. So we want to take a pause right now and just celebrate what you're doing. If you need to do some of that, I see some movement already. That's a great way to celebrate. Excellent. Okay, so what you're going to get to do now is you're going to get to show your work to some other people. And you're going to get to basically talk about, compare your notes and give each other feedback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break you all out in a second. So actually I need to make one adjustment. Let me do that real quickly. If you've not experienced this before, I think this is one of the coolest features of Zoom, which is the ability to break groups out. And okay, thanks for bearing with me on this. What we're about to do is we're about to go into breakouts. So you're going to see a little message pop up. It's going to say join a breakout room, and you click on the join the breakout room and join. And then you'll be in different pairs. One of you are going to be in a larger group. So when it breaks you out, what I want you to do is I want you all to basically share each other's, introduce yourselves first of all. And I want you to share each other's Google Docs. So this means you're going to have to go back into the Google Drive and find whoever's going to share first and open up their Google Doc. This is whoever's going to present first. There's going to be about 25 minutes total. So you're going to have a chance to basically explain what it is that your project is, give people a few minutes to just kind of read through the success spectrum and just give your partner feedback. You know, be constructive. Be kind, but be honest, and you know, just give whatever feedback you can, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to switch off. So everyone should have about 10 minutes to be able to present their spectrum to each other. Okay, I'm going to break you all out. All right, welcome back. I think we've got everyone, right? Let me just double check. Looks like everyone is back. Okay, so you're going to have a chance to do a longer debrief, but what I want to make sure we do is just leave a few minutes open. If you have a burning question about the process, anything about the tool itself, now's a great time to ask that question. Trina.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. So one question for me is, I'm thinking about using this with clients, and when asking them to imagine success, some folks find that to be quite a struggle, and so it might be necessary to provide additional prompts. And I'm wondering what questions you've asked to encourage people in a useful way to actually get at what success means to them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. My simplest answer for that, I think one of the things that I have found to be most effective is to ask them that question twice. So when you ask them, say, imagine success, and you let them do the work, and then actually name the self-censorship, say, okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to truly envision what success would look like. Everyone has, this self-censor. We're often worried about, stretching ourselves or like what's realistic. I want you to just let go of that for a second. So that's sort of like the easiest technique I use. And then I think, and I'm sure we could all do like a little knowledge share around this, like sometimes it's environmental. It's like making sure people have the right space, give them a chance to talk, all of those other things. Does anyone else want to share an idea around that?
Yeah, this is Anna. Something that I find helpful is to try to mix in coaching questions with these kinds of tools. So depending on what the context is, using powerful questions like what or how questions help people kind of get out of their own way. And then visualization can also be really helpful, right? So a year from now, what's it going to look like and feel like to have accomplished this?
Thank you, Anna. Any other burning questions? Ginger.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you're going to get to this as we debrief, but I'm curious about, right, I mean, aligning intentions. If you're doing this with a group, even with 2 people, much less 9, 10 or more, getting to that, making the implicit explicit and kind of digging down. Do you have a set? I mean, we all have sets of questions that we use to do as coaching questions, like was just mentioned, but maybe you could provide some thoughts around how to do that alignment piece.
Great question. Let's save that for the debrief. And let's make sure we come back to that. That's a really great question.
And Suzanne has a question in the chat.
Thank you, Jody. Suzanne, thank you. Working with a senior team on group norms.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Eugene. I'll be working with this team. They're like suited elites doing progressive work, and they're not used to a lot of warm and fuzzy. They're used to sitting at board tables, and but I'm really trying to push them to leverage their diversity and thinking and background and so on in a 3-hour session. And I'm wanting them to really build alignment around whatever that code of conduct or team alignment looks like. And they're not used to working in this way, but they want it. They know that they need it. But I'm wondering if this continuum, rather than just what would success look like for group norms, if the continuum might work, if you've ever given process recommendations for working with a team like that. So there's maybe, 10, 12 people trying to develop their own continuum of success around what team alignment looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I don't typically use the spectrum necessarily when I'm doing group norms work.
Okay.
I actually have a different tool that I use for that, and I'd be happy to send that out to folks if they're interested, and I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation about it. And again, I think underlying this all, it's the spectrum concept. It's not necessarily the tool itself. If it's valuable in the group norms process to have people think about the spectrum that they're talking about, that sort of thing, then I think it's applicable. But we could brainstorm more about that. Any other burning questions? Okay, we're gonna do this again. I'm gonna try and partner you up with new people. And again, if you will bear with me, we will see how this goes. So give me 1 second.
And what are our goals this time, Eugene?
Same exact process. I'm going to give you 25 minutes. You're going to find each other's spectrums. You're going to share. You're going to talk about your work. You're going to give each other feedback. And then we'll all come back and we'll do a longer debrief.
Okay.
So let me just make sure I have everybody in a room. All right, I think we had this. 25 minutes. I'll come ping you when we're all done, and enjoy your breakouts.
Art.
Denise.
Oh, that was great.
Fantastic. I think we have everybody. Let me just double check. Yeah, it looks like we're all back. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Hope you had good conversations. So there was a question on the table that I wanted to make sure we talked about before, which is how we use this tool for groups. Before we address that question, I want to just give you all a minute to, if you have burning questions that you want to share, go ahead and type them in the chat window, and we'll go ahead and compile and cluster those, and then we can start answering and then debriefing a little bit of the experience. Just take 1 minute to type your questions. Okay, feel free to keep typing. I'm going to start answering some of these questions. I think I'll start with the maybe some of the simpler questions first, and then go into the more detailed questions. So I'll take Denise's question around epic success. So percentage there is 0. You're not trying to design for
Love
epic
that.
success.
Oh.
Love that.
Right. So if you want to design for it, you move it into target. Right. And that's part of the art. It's moving things around into the right columns. And someone mentioned that. So someone said, who was that? Who mentioned that? Yeah, Ginger, you know, that realization that you had is exactly why epic success is there. So Ginger's comment was, we started realizing that epic success ideas help to inform target success. I'm assuming this makes sense. Let's see. The date column. So the question is, how can you use the date in a meaningful way when you have minimum, target, and epic success? So there's a couple of reasons for the date column. The primary purpose of it is to have an end date, right? When you're thinking about success. So part of specificity is like knowing when you're examining this. In a lot of the projects that I work on, we actually will use multiple spectrums, sometimes doing it as like rows in a spectrum, or sometimes using separate spectrums per date. So you might have like quarterly spectrums, and then like a yearly spectrum, and then like a spectrum for 5 years down the line. But it's an important part of the specificity. Did that answer the question? Let's see. So failure column, we didn't go over the failure column. I apologize for that, actually. So I generally want people to start with success. And then I ask for the failure question. You really want people to think about, what does failure look like? And to apply the same principles to failure as you would success, which is to be specific as possible. And the value of doing that column, this will start to inform our group conversation as well. But the initial value is the gut check, your minimum success. So to give you an example of this, I did a success spectrum for another workshop that I was actually just piloting, that I was just going to try. And I put down, I had like a line item for number of participants I wanted enrolled in this pilot. And for minimum success, I put down one participant. And because I thought, like, if I just have one person, it's fine. It's just a pilot. And when I sat down and thought about failure, I'm like, you know, if I don't at least have like a few people like participating, then I think I would feel like this was not successful. So so thinking about failure helped me gut check minimum success was. Any other questions about that? Did that answer the question? Cool. Let's see what else here. Absolutely. So there's a question about target success informing minimum as well. Yeah, totally. Like they all inform each other, and they're meant to be iterative. So that's why we did it in 2 iterations. And again, this is going to inform the group conversation, because it becomes much more interesting when you use it with groups. But part of the art is just moving things back and forth and thinking about it as a spectrum, not just as a single thing. Can you talk about doing it cross-functionally? Who asked that question?
Hey, it's Anna.
Anna, what do you mean by that?
So when you're working with teams from different departments or practice areas, right, who need to collaborate or have the desire to collaborate, can you talk about what this looks like to plan collectively?
Yes. Okay, we'll talk about that in the context of groups. That's a great question. Okay, so the last simple question here, may you use it, and how would you like to be acknowledged? So yes, for sure, you may absolutely use this. You're welcome to use it, you're welcome to share it. I actually revoke all intellectual property rights to every tool that I create. And so what that means is that you don't have to credit me, you don't ever have to mention my name. If you do, like, I'm delighted. The main thing, the reason why I create these tools are for people to use it. So if you want to slap your branding on the tools, like, I encourage that, I welcome it, please do it. Let's see. Okay, so let's just talk quickly about how we use it in groups. So there's a couple of different ways that I've used it with groups in the past, and actually Tuyet and Denise have experienced this. So I will typically go through the same exact exercise, and you can do it both remotely using a Google Doc, or you can actually, we have like paper templates which you can download from our website, and you can just have people do Post-its. And I'll go through the exact same set of instructions, except I'll have people do it themselves. And the only difference between doing it with a group versus doing it individually is you do a cluster. So what's interesting about when you do that with a group is if people start listing a lot of the same things, then that's an indication of alignment, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good goal or it's a good metric, but it means that the group is aligned around it, right? If you have a bunch of people who are putting things down and they're either different or they're in different columns, now you see the misalignment. And so the tool basically enables you to zero in very quickly on where the misalignments are, and to start by having conversations around that. So that's basically the base way that we use these tools. What I will say is I spend a lot of time on goal alignment. If I'm doing like a meeting, for example, so I'm doing like a strategy process with a group, we might allocate like 6 days of design time for a big participatory like organizational strategy process, and this is just for design. I'm going to spend 3 of those days around aligning around goals and success. I spend a significant amount of time doing that. Again, it's an iterative process, like you go back and forth, right? You might start with goals and success, and then you try and do a little design, and then that leads to new insights about goals and success. But what I have found is that alignment process actually is really challenging. It surfaces all sorts of assumptions and disagreements, and investing the time to actually work through that alignment is actually much more powerful than spending time working out the how. Because if you have the alignment, then the how typically falls into place very easily. Any question? I know there were some similar related questions before we get into that. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Maybe like Tuyet or Denise, do you want to share your experiences in using this tool for the Black Lake meeting?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Tuyet, and feel free to add. I think what was really helpful was this is where we started, and we started out slow, and we were convening a group of, I don't know, 16 folks from across the country in different, disciplines in our social justice movement, and spending the time at the beginning really being clear, like, what does target success look like, was very helpful. So an example was we said, we don't want to reinforce cliques that may already exist. We want everyone to be included. and feel like part of this thing. And so everything as we were, then it's like the how is easy. It's like, well, how do we make sure that we're creating space for folks that is welcoming and that you're making people feel included. So having clarity about what our goals were and what we were trying to achieve made the planning of it, and I think we kind of came right up to the edge of the deadline on planning because we wrestled a lot as a new group, but having done those goals at the beginning made it a lot easier. And we were able to be in a space with, 50 social justice movement leaders or some number, I forget, but it was pretty good. So
thanks, Denise. Yeah, do you want to add anything to that, your experience?
Yeah, I mean, sadly I did not get to see the end result, but I thought what was great about the planning was that whole part about the misalignment, or just really allowing us to wrestle with the goals themselves, right? And allowing us to be nervous about something and expressing them early on, because usually projects are most tense in the middle and people are like, oh, we didn't talk that all the way through. So all of those, I think this, has a literally putting people on the same page, right? So the more explicit you can be, the more you understand how, how far people are willing to go. That's really exciting. So yeah, I found it really useful. And obviously, having gone through that, I really wanted to learn how to use it more.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's see real quickly. A lot of questions coming up here. So here's just a shorter one from Nicole about adjusting your end date mid-process. Again, yes, absolutely. Like, it's iterative, right? You assume that it's going to be a process, and as you start exploring it, you're going to make shifts. So in what types of groups or situations would this tool be less helpful? That's a great question. If we're doing something relatively straightforward, like oftentimes you'll do like a goals outcomes exercise if you're like planning a short meeting or whatever. And if it feels like crisp and clear, like, the spectrum is not necessary. One indicator of that is if you start with a spectrum and you start filling it out, and everything that you're filling out is in minimum, and you truly have nothing else to put there, you don't need the spectrum, right? It's not helpful at that point. Let's see. Frequent struggles. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I would classify this in a couple of different ways. Like, someone pointed out initially that sometimes it's hard for groups to envision success. And that speaks to a whole different, like, there's a mindset challenge that's happening there, right? And it speaks to kind of a stuckness that occurs. And so the tool itself could be an indicator of that, right? Again, like, if everything is coming up is minimum and soft, like, this is where like the art form starts coming in. This is where it's helpful to have like a third party be able to come in and to support you in this process. One thing I would say about the third party issue, and I hope this came up in your kind of peer sessions, of course, if you can hire a consultant to come in or hire a facilitator to come in and help you with that process, that's always a great option. But just having someone else come in and do that with your group, your peers, I feel like that's an option that we don't take advantage of enough in our like daily work. And just that alone can help kind of break people through for that sort of thing. So again, it is sort of the practice of that. Anna, your question about cross-functionality, I think it feels like it's a little bit more of a complicated question. Like, yes, I think it's valuable in general to have cross-functional conversations and to set cross-functional goals in addition to your functional goals. How you go about doing it, I think it depends on context, right? And maybe we could talk a little bit more if you have something specific that's coming up for you. Let's see, I think that's it. Oh, how can you ensure that? Wow, you all are asking really great questions here. So here's what I'm going to do since we're almost out of time. I'm going to pull together these questions, and I'm actually going to share my answer. I'll write up my answer and share it with all of you as an email. And then what I'd encourage you to do, especially if people are open to it, since this is a pretty small group of people, I will do it with an open CC so that you all, if you want to share your answers, you can share with each other as well. And if you want to opt out from that, that's totally fine. Just drop Julia or myself an email beforehand, and we'll make sure you're not on that. That sound good? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay. Well, we've got a few more minutes. What I'd love to do is I'd love to end this with just a one-word checkout from everybody. Thank you again for coming and participating. Really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate you working through some of the technical issues. We're going to send out a survey at the end of this process, to just be a real brief survey. If you could just fill it out quickly and let us know how you thought this went, that'd be great. We love feedback. Julia, Jody, do you have anything else to add? Any other logistics?
The only thing that I would add is that it might be useful also, Eugene, to send to folks some of the different filled in spectrums. I'd be happy to share ours of how we do cross-functional, how you see different parts of a project in one success spectrum, etc. And just another thank you to everybody that joined us today.
Yeah, same here. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll also include the recording of this too in the email.
Thank you for that. And with that, I would love to just get one word checkouts from everybody, just one word, just expressing how you're feeling. And just to make this easy, I'm just going to call these out alphabetically, and we'll bring this to a close. So Bart.
Awesome.
Clay.
Inspired.
Cynthia.
Helpful.
Denise.
Energized.
Ginger.
Motivated.
Lisa.
Connected.
Michael.
Epic.
Susan.
Inspired.
Viet.
Excited.
Oh, and it looks like we have some folks on mute. Anna?
Productive.
Okay. Sorry, this is going out of order on me here. Nicole?
Grateful -- optimistic -- excited.
Suzanne?
Grateful.
Trina, did you go?
Activated.
Oh, Trina.
Ginger? Ginger, you're on mute.
I said motivated, but I'm happy to also add very grateful.
Is there anyone else we missed? Anyone didn't have a chance to check out?
I missed Molly. I didn't hear anything from Molly.
Molly is not connected. There's something weird going on.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. Okay, Julia, you want to check out? One word?
Same as Lisa, connected.
Jody?
Grateful.
Appreciative. Thank you all so much. Really enjoyed having you all.
Thank you.
In touch soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.